Welcome, welcome, come on in and take a look around. Sure, everything is for sale and at a price you can afford. In fact, I've got the perfect thing for you. It's 19 Reasons to Read Needful Things. Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. I'm Dave Musson, at Dave Musson on Instagram, and this is the place where I'm going through the works of Stephen King in chronological order and giving you 19 reasons to read each book. Why 19? Because it's a very important number in the world of Stephen King, and I have just borrowed it and doubled my workload effectively, because why give you 10 reasons when I could make it much harder for myself and give you 19 instead? Lucky you! In this video, we've reached 1991 and what was billed as the final Castle Rock story. This chunky beast that is Needful Things. So, if you're good, let's get started, shall we? There is the potential for some spoilers ahead, but if that's alright with you, take my hand, let's come and see what's on sale today. Here are 19 reasons to read Needful Things. So as I mentioned in my intro, this one was billed as the final Castle Rock story, which the marketing department would have absolutely loved, and they latched onto it, hyping it to the max, even from before 4 past midnight being published. And the hype worked. 1.5 million copies sold. With that in mind, it's pretty interesting to note that Needful Things is actually considered a bit of a failure for King sales-wise. I know, right? 1.5 million copies for any other author would be an absolute personal best, but not for King. Needful Things was the first book of his since the publication of the Bachman books in 1985 that didn't become a New York Times bestseller in either hardback or paperback. The hardback made it to number 2, the paperback to number 3. Should also point out that despite all the chaos, carnage and random crazy stuff that literally explodes throughout Needful Things, this didn't end up being the final Castle Rock story. We go back to Castle Rock plenty of other times in the rest of King's work. Most notably, most memorably, in It Grows on You, a short story in Nightmares and Dreamscapes, in Bag of Bones, in Lisey's story, in Elevation, and in the Gwendy's books that he wrote with Richard Chismar. Something else noteworthy about Needful Things is that it was the first book that King wrote from start to finish completely sober, well, except for cigarettes. But it was the first time he'd written something in full without alcohol or drugs in his system since basically he was a teenager. And as we've discussed in previous videos, King had this paranoia that his talent was actually just fueled by the bottle. So for him to write something as chunky as this, and for him to nail it, in my opinion, it must have been a massive confidence boost for him. And it really was a line in the sand for him to re-establish his own belief in his own abilities and then look ahead to the rest of the decade, where he became much more ambitious and much more diverse in his output. Whether you enjoy Needful Things or not is a massively important part in the King journey. So let's get this out there. I love Needful Things. Yeah, it's crazy, it's silly, it's wild, but I just really like it. I put it in my top 10 video that I recorded back at the start of this channel, and it held up for me really well on reread. That's it. I just love it. So I should mention the hook of this one, shouldn't I? Needful Things is a new shop that has opened in the small town of Castle Rock, and it just so happens that it has something for everyone at a price they can afford as well. The very first customer is an 11-year-old kid called Brian Rusk, who goes in and finds the thing he's been looking for ages, a signed Sandy Koufax baseball card, and not just signed, but signed to Brian. Other residents find stuff they want in there as well. Carnival glass, a bit of Noah's Ark, a foxtail, and some other stuff as well. The key thing here is that Leland Gaunt, the man who runs the shop, yeah, he'll take your money, but he doesn't worry too much about how much you've got. He'll take your money and he'll also ask you to do him a favour. Play a prank on somebody in town, and then your bill is settled. Thing is though, Gaunt knows exactly who hates who in Castle Rock. And these little tricks, these little pranks he plays are deliberately set up to start these chain reactions going off among all the residents of Castle Rock, which builds and builds and builds into this point where people are literally killing each other in the street, and it is all going off. And then it gets even more fun because Gaunt starts selling guns, Ace Merrill turns up, and well, boom, it becomes a really wild ride. Now the thing is with those treasured purchases, they're junk. That baseball card that Brian thought he had, it was just some tatty old thing. Likewise all the other purchases people make. You see, Leland Gaunt is an evil, twisted, magical dude who can make you see things that your brain wants you to see, that are different from reality. His real business interest in Castle Rock is souls. And carnage, of course. Now, there is a lot going on in this book. I mean, look at the size of it. But in King's hands, you never feel lost. He'd already mastered the art of building a small town and taking you round it throughout his books earlier in his career. And you're just in safe hands going through this one. So one of the few people who doesn't succumb to the charms of Gaunt is the Chief of Police and our hero, Alan Pangborn, who we met for the first time in the Dark Half. So Alan in this one is grieving for the loss of his wife and son, but he's found new love in the form of Polly Chalmers, and he puts his magic hands to work throughout the book. Quite literally doing magic tricks at various points and making shadow puppets, but also magically making Polly orgasm, using his thumb through her jeans while hoisting her up in the air, or some weird random details that I can't quite remember. All you need to know is it's hot, okay? Shout out to Polly's sewing supplies shop, which is called You Sew and So. So King had set out for this book to be satire, a real piss take at the just craziness, greed and excess that was the 1980s. But most people saw it as serious horror, which it really isn't. And that probably explains why quite a few people don't like this one in particular. But if you see it as that black comedy, you will have a great time. That's not to say that there aren't some dark and horrific moments, of course. There is one suicide in this that is pretty fucking haunting. So some of the criticisms for this one are that it is a bit formulaic and a bit repetitive. And I get that. Person goes into shop, sees something they want, buys something they want, plays prank. Prank has consequence. People start fighting and killing. Repeat. But it's still kind of fun. If you just grab some popcorn and go with it, you'll have a great time. So being a Castle Rock story, you won't be surprised to know that there are lots of connections to other Stephen King works in this one. I've already mentioned Ace Merrill, who is in The Body and Nona, and of course is the nephew of Pop Merrill, who was in The Sundog, and Ace has just got out of course, Shawshank Prison. Polly's aunt, Evie, is in Cujo, and Pangborn makes a shadow pup version of that unfortunate St. Bernard, and also the sparrows from the Dark Half. Talking of the Dark Half, we learn in this one that Tad, whatever we're calling him, is not coping well with how that book ended, and is letting Pangborn know in the form of lots of drunken late night phone calls. There's also a scene where a crow swoops in and casts its eye over proceedings. Now, where else have we seen crows flying into different scenes of carnage and just watching to see what's going on? Could this be Randall Flagg? Who knows? And lastly, this one, at the end, we've left Castle Rock and we're in Junction City, Iowa, which was, of course, the setting for the library policeman. And there's probably more that I've just forgotten. Couldn't be bothered to research for this video because who's got the time for that? Come on. Okay, let's talk about the ending for this one. So it is not good. One of the best characters in Needful Things has to be the crooked town selectman, Danforth Buster Keaton, who has embezzled thousands of dollars of town money, and he's about to be found out. He goes into Needful Things, the shop, and is sold a toy that allows him to learn the outcomes of horse races before they happen, so he can go and bet all his money on them and win that money back. Trouble is, Buster goes crazy big time, gets really paranoid about his toy and all the people chasing him, is very susceptible to all the pranks that are played on him, and, well, ends up hammering his wife to death, going mental and becoming Gaunt's assistant for a bit. It's kind of wild. All of these scenes are kind of wild and kind of fun. So in the middle of all of the chaos of this one, Alan and Polly's love story is actually one you can really believe in and root for, and those scenes together give you some much needed respite from all the wildness that is surrounding them. So we do have, out there in the wider world of pop culture, a couple of cool nods to Needful Things. So there's a Rick and Morty episode called Something Wicked This Way Comes, where the devil is selling cursed items in a shop called, you guessed it, Needful Things. And the font from the front cover of this one, Very similar to the old Stranger Things font, don't you think? Lastly, I'll stress again, you shouldn't go into this one expecting anything too serious. It is meant to be satire. It is meant to be silly. It is meant to shine a light on the stupidness and excessiveness that was the 1980s. Just read this one wearing your black comedy goggles and you will have the best time. So there we go, 19 reasons to read Needful Things by Stephen King. Let me know what you think in the comments, and also let me know what item would convince you to make a purchase in this little shop. I'd love to know. Other than that, thank you so much for checking out my channel. Do feel free to subscribe if you want more videos like this. Go and check out what I've already done if you're looking for something to kill a bit of time with. And if you want to say hi on Instagram, I'm at Dave Musson. Do pop on over there. Other than that, as I said, thanks so much for stopping by, and I'll see you at the next one. And watch what you buy.